Allan Wernick is a professor at Baruch College, and he's director of CUNY's Citizenship Now program. His weekly column appears in the Daily News. It's called Immigration and Citizenship, and he's a great advocate for immigrants. He has a wonderful website that you should all take a look at. It's really an amazing resource of immigration information, practical information. He's taught immigration and policy at UCLA and California State University at Dominguez Hills. He served on the National Board of Directors of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, chair of the Immigration Committee of the Association of the Bar of the City of New York, and president of the New York chapter of AILA. He's appeared in local and national media, and it's a great honor to introduce you here, Professor Wernick. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And students, I will take attendance after his lecture.
So thank you for having me here. It's my first time here at St. Francis College. You have a great facility here, and it seems you also have great faculty as well. I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes, so we leave plenty of time for discussion and questions. And I want to start by telling you that immigration reform is going to happen. And, you know, every time I read somebody say something that indicates that they doubt that it's going to happen, I think that they're out of touch with the politics of what's going on in the country. Since the last big legalization program, the last effort to legalize the undocumented individuals in the United States was in 1986. And at that time, they had the idea that they were going to basically deal with all the undocumented people in the United States by legalizing a bunch, and then through a program called employer sanctions, which is a program where employers are penalized if they hire people who are not authorized to work here, that all the people who are undocumented who didn't qualify for the legalization would go home. And so neither of those things happened. First of all, under that legalization program, you had to have entered the United States before January 1st, 1982, but the program didn't go into effect until 1987. So you already had 5 years of individuals who are here undocumented when the program took effect, and the bill was actually passed in November of 1986. So you had at that point really almost 5 years. Is that right? Yes, almost 5 years of people who didn't qualify. And then the employer sanctions part, which is supposed to drive everybody home by taking the job magnet away, also didn't work. And that's because well, we can all have our opinions about why that is. And my opinion is this: it was never designed to work, because the people who have the most political influence in the United States, people with the most money, most involved in manufacturing and agriculture and other businesses, they are going to get what they want no matter what. And what they wanted since 1986 until the present is a lot of immigrants coming to the United States. And it wasn't really until the recession hit that we started seeing even any kind of enforcement along the border that was substantial, and you started to see a little bit of enforcement of this employer sanction. So let me just summarize what I've said so far. You know, I'm a professor also. So just so you get it. So in 1986, Congress passed a bill that legalized a certain portion of the people here that we say were undocumented, people here without legal status. And they assumed that no more people would come because the job magnet would be taken away by employer sanctions, by penalizing employers. And they never really penalized employers, and they didn't legalize the people who were here. So when we look at the legislation that I expect to see come this coming week, out of the proposal anyways, we'll want to see two things. One, who do they legalize? Are they going to legalize under President Obama's suggestion? He said he wants to legalize anyone who was here on the day that a bill is introduced in the Senate. The rumors that we're hearing out of Washington is that the people have had to have been here at least 2 years. But again, any group of people who do not benefit are going to be here continuing undocumented. And so that's not going to be a good thing. So we're going to want to see, those of us who want to see this problem resolved, we want to see some kind of program that allows people to apply as close to the time that the bill is enacted as possible. And then we're also going to want to look at the enforcement side. And they're talking about a major increase in border enforcement, and they're also talking about what's called an E-Verify system. And I told you what Employer Sanctions is. Employer Sanctions is a program so that when you go get a job, you have to show the employer you're authorized to work here. If the employer doesn't ask you for papers or knowingly hires you, then the employer can be penalized. Well, that doesn't work very well for a lot of reasons. I told you the main reasons. I don't think anyone wanted to enforce it. But the other reason is it's very difficult to enforce because phony documents are so readily available. And the employer doesn't have to know whether your documents are phony or not. And I know Los Angeles, where I spend a lot of time, you can go to a place called MacArthur Park, and for $25 you can get a card that looks like a green card and a Social Security card, and it looks pretty good. They both look pretty good. They're not real, but they look pretty good. And you show that to an employer, the employer's off the hook. So what they're going to probably do in the new law is they're going to have something called E-Verify. Now, E-Verify is a program we have already. It's electronic verification, but it's not mandated. Not everyone has to have it. And what they're probably going to do under the new law is mandate it. So we have the 1986 law. We're working our way up to the present. Let's look at 1996. Now, Father Brian mentioned he was quite familiar with that. In 1996, they passed some more laws that were designed to end undocumented immigration forever. That was under, who was president in 1996? Can you help me here? Bill Clinton, that's correct. So Bill Clinton, a Democrat, signed into law the most restrictive anti-immigrant legislation probably since 1952, which you can ask me about 1952 laws later. The Bill Clinton proposal was to do this. Well, we're going to penalize people who are here, make it harder for them to get green cards unless they leave the United States within 180 days of arrival. And we're going to make it very, very difficult for them to get green cards. Well, that didn't work either because the magnet, the pull of being here and working in the United States, and for some people, the freedom from oppression, but for most people, it's really the opportunity to work, is so great that people are willing to stay here illegally for the rest of their lives. They're not going to go back to their countries. So I remember in 1996, the law went into effect in 1997, the reporters were calling me and said, well, where should we go at the airport to see all the immigrants who are undocumented leaving? And there were reporters on the border. They thought there'd be seeing thousands. Never happened because the magnet, the pull of employment is so great that people are not going to leave. So that 1996 bill failed to address the problem of undocumented immigration. Now they say there's 11.4 million undocumented immigrants here, and this new legislation is supposed to take care of that. We'll see whether it does or it doesn't. We don't really know what it's going to say and what its parameters are, but I'm going to give you a general overview of what I think is likely to be in the bill. I already mentioned E-Verify. So that means when you go to get a job, probably be implemented over a few years. When you go to get a job, your employer is going to have to check electronically, probably online, to see whether your Social Security number and identifying information, your name and date of birth, show that you're lawfully in the United States. There's a lot of criticism about that program. Some people feel that it's error-prone, and there have been errors. So if you show your papers and for some reason it doesn't show up in the computer you're authorized to work, you're not going to be able to start working. So that's one concern. And then the other concern is that some people are worried about the fact that everyone's information, in order for the system to work, is going to have to be in a national database, and some people are worried about the government having that. There will be a legalization program. It will include almost everyone who's here without papers. We don't know when the cutoff is going to be. Will it be next week or will it be 2 years prior? There will be some exclusions for people who have committed crimes, but everyone else is going to qualify for some type of legal status. It will be a temporary status, or provisional they may call it. And it will probably be for about 10 years. So during this 10-year period, if you're undocumented, if you're here unlawfully, you'll be able to work in the United States. Most likely you'll be able to travel outside of the United States. you'll be able to, if you qualify some way for permanent residence through marriage or employment or some other way, you'll be able to pursue that. But if you don't qualify through that, after 10 years, you'll be able to apply for permanent residence, or what we commonly refer to as green card status. And then after that, 3 to 5 years later, you'll be able to apply for U.S. citizenship. So this path to citizenship is going to take most people between 13 and 15 years. So it's going to be a relatively slow process, but at least the people here are going to be, who are undocumented, are going to be able to work, and they're going to be able to stay here, and they don't have to be afraid of being deported. For people who are here, some of you may have heard about the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act is a proposal to allow individuals who came to the United States before the age of 16, who have been here at least 5 years, to get some kind of permanent resident status more quickly than the other people who are here unlawfully. And that's probably going to be in the bill too, and that'll probably qualify people within 2 years. People under the 10-year program are going to have to pay their taxes, they're going to have to learn English, so they may have to take a civics exam, but they're eventually going to get legal status. So I want to just address 2 more things and I'll finish up. Of course, there are many criticisms of the legislation. Some people don't think it's right that people who are here unlawfully are able to get legal status. You may think that's, you may think that yourselves. Some people, like for instance, I know somebody who's in line to get her green card through employment. She's going to wait 5 years to get her green card, but she's here legally, so she's not going to benefit from this law that benefits people here illegally. So she doesn't think it's fair, because she's going to have to wait 5 years to get her green card. These people are going to get legal status, maybe 10 years to the green card, but they're going to get legal status right away, be able to travel freely, be able to change jobs, which she can't do because her employment is tied to her job. But there's 2 things that I think that are most being focused on in the media and by those who oppose immigration legalization in Congress, and I just want to address those last 2 points and then I'll finish up. One is the border. We have to control the border. So a lot of people are saying, well, we need to control the border so that we can stop a future flow of undocumented immigrants for coming to the United States. Well, as a practical matter, the border is as controlled as it's ever going to be. We have more Border Patrol agents than we've ever had, over 20,000. We're spending more money, close to $12 billion. And the number of undocumented immigrants coming to the United States are the lowest point it's ever been in 40 years. Now, I don't think that's primarily because of enforcement. Enforcement's part of it. But there has been an increase in enforcement, as I mentioned. I think the main thing is that the job magnet is not as strong. Just like any magnet, it gets, you know, it's like an electronic magnet. It gets strong and it gets weak. It gets strong and it gets weak, depending on the juice that's put into it. And right now, the juice of the economy is very, very weak. So people don't want to come here. People don't want to risk crossing the desert or getting caught or perhaps being brutalized or leaving their families to come to the United States because there's no work here. Once the economy picks up, you're going to see that magnet, the electricity into that magnet get much stronger, and I'm not convinced that any amount of border control or any kind of control at the airports is going to keep undocumented immigration from coming here, because people who are desperate are going to want to come. And the people who control the job market, which is the manufacturing class, they're going to want a little bit of opening up, aren't they? Because they're going to want more workers to come into the United States. The other thing you'll hear is that people should go to the back of the line. So the idea is that all the people here illegally, they snuck in and they cut in the line. Like if you're waiting in the line in the movie theater and somebody cuts in front of you. The problem with that analogy, that you cut in the line at the movie theater, is that there is no line. So if you're a hard-working, tax-paying person of good character and you want to come to the United States, you cannot get in line. Now, there are ways that you can come to the United States. You have to be a relative, and I won't go into the details now, but you can ask about it. Certain relatives of U.S. citizens and green card holders, certain people who have special skills or needed skills or outstanding in their field. Yes, they can get in line and get their green cards. But just the average person who's like I said, a person of good character, hardworking, industrious, he or she, there's no line to get in. When they talk about that line, they're talking about the quota. Remember I told you about the person who's waiting 5 years for her green card? Well, she's in line, and there is a line for her. But the point I'm making is that most of these people who are here undocumented, there's no line for them to get in. There just is no line. There's no way. And in some countries, they have a point system. You know, if you have certain kinds of jobs and you've been here a certain number of years. But we don't have that in the United States. We're very, very narrowly defined. We very, very narrowly define who can come into the United States based on employment and family. There are a few exceptions, asylees, and a few other categories. Here's what's happening. First of all, although the economy is still in really terrible shape, there's a sense among the populace that things are getting slightly better. So that, and in fact they are. You know, unemployment is down from where it was, let's say, in 2008 when the crisis first hit. But more importantly, I think what happened was that everyone in Congress figured out that immigrants are, and their friends are a very important voting bloc in the United States. And in certain parts of the country, it's just unstoppable. The third thing I would say about it is that you look what happened with the DREAM Act and the Dreamers before the election, just for those of you who may not have followed that. So I told you what the DREAM Act was. You came here before the age of 16, you're under 31, you've been here 5 years, you get temporary status for 2 years, then you get a green card. And it's failed. That law has not passed Congress. But what happened was the people who were in that category, they started coming out and they started saying, we're here and we're unafraid and we're going to make noise. And they started sitting in at Obama's campaign offices. And all of a sudden Obama figured out, you know, his people were saying, I can't really do anything to help these people. Well, they evolved, as we're hearing the politicians are saying. That's the word they're using. They evolved. So Obama's administration evolved, and they came up to the conclusion that, well, they can give these people temporary legal status just by a stroke of a pen, and they did. So there's a lesson there, and the lesson is that if you don't make a demand, you don't get a demand met. And so those students made a demand, and they shouted loudly and clearly. And I think that now, at this point, where Congress has said, the President has said, we're going to give this to you. You know, even Bonner, the head of the House Republicans, has said, we're going to do something. I just think it'd be too crazy for, I think the response of the populace, the immigrant populace, and their friends. When I say their friends, I'm not just talking about the undocumented people. I'm saying their families, the churches, like and the other religious organizations. I just don't think they would stand for it. So that's why I'm so confident. And I've been right all along. In 2000, not that I'm going to be right this time. I don't have a crystal ball. There could be a major crisis of some sort. You know, there could be a war with North Korea, for instance. That may throw things a little bit off, and you know, may change things among the populace. But in 2007, when everyone's saying that there was going to be immigration reform, I said that was not going to happen. When Obama got elected in 2008, I remember meeting with people in Washington. They said, no, it's immigration reform, Obama promised. I said, we're in an economic crisis. You can't give 11 million people employment authorization when unemployment is, 12%. Oh, no, they said, because I wrote in January 2008, I said in a piece in the Daily News that we should fight for the DREAM Act because I thought that was a very viable alternative. But no one would listen to me, and I was vilified. Oh, I'm selling out the immigrants, I said, okay, listen, I'm in favor of whatever you can get, I'm in favor of it. Of course, 4 years later, we still don't have, almost 5 years later, we don't have a DREAM Act anymore. So, yet, right? So now we're seeing immigrants. So I'm very, very confident. I think we're going to see it. I'll even tell you when. You see, it's not going to happen before the summer, like everyone is saying. It's going to happen in October, November. Then there'll be 6 months. Of course, I don't really know. It could happen before the summer. I don't think so. I think it's more likely to happen October, November. Then there'll be a 6-month period of preparation where the government is going to get ready. They'll have to produce a form. And for those of you who are familiar with how the federal government works, Congress passed a law, but then the agencies, in this case, the Immigration Service and the the Border Protection Agency. They don't call them Border Patrol anymore. It's Customs and Border Protection. They're going to come up with their regulations, and then they'll implement it. Like I said, it'll probably be a 6-month period. So, I direct a project that provides free immigration services. That's where I spend most of my professional time. And so we're gearing up for like April of 2014. That's when we think we're going to have to start helping people with their applications. But I'm just one person. I would say I have a well-educated guest, though. Yes.
I have a friend that's undocumented, but he doesn't have anything in his name. He has the same job for a long time, nothing under his name. How do you prove that he's been here for so long?
Yeah. So here's what's going to happen. They're going to want to see some. Let me answer the question. I'm going to get to your answer, but let me just tell you about what happened in 1986. In 1986, they accepted a lot broader groupings of kinds of documents that you could submit, like an affidavit. Let's say you had Father Brian write it. He's a respected person. Here he is at this well-known institution, and he's a man of the cloth. So he writes an affidavit, a sworn statement saying, Mary was here. She's been here for the last 5 years. I've known her at the church. And they won't accept that this time. They're going to require some form of document, something that's like a piece of paper that was, we lawyers say, in the normal course of business. So that means like you went to the doctor. Person went to the doctor, or they got a ticket for driving, something like that. But they're going to want to have something in their own name. So they're going to want to start using their own name because that's what their birth certificate is going to show, and their foreign passport is going to show who they are. They can start filing tax returns. Now, if you earned more than $400 as an independent contractor, you're required to submit a tax return. Of course, if you earned only $400, you're not going to have to pay any taxes. You just submit the return. So he or she should submit the return. Is it a he? It's a he. So he should submit a return in his own name, and then he can file a form called a W-7. That's a form that gives you what's called an individual tax identification number, and he can use that number at work. If he's been working on the books, employers, okay. But just so you know, if people are working on the books, even with a phony name, they get it, and they're undocumented, they can get a rebate from the government. They can, if they have paid more in taxes, as many of us do. And I just got the email today from my accountant. I paid more in taxes last year than I had to pay, so I'm not going to have to write a check out April 15th. But if you've paid more in taxes than that's been taken out from your salary, then you can actually get the money back even if you're undocumented. So the question you're raising is a very valid one. And he's going to have to really start looking for some kind of like a rent receipt, but something that was created in the normal course of business, not something that was created just to prove that he was in the United States.